In this video, I'll be looking at why the Holocaust happened, what led up to it, and why the Allies were in part responsible for the genocide. Before we get started, we must understand the genetic toxin response. The genetic toxin response is how people in groups interact with people in other groups when one group behaves in certain ways. The reason it is called the genetic toxin response is because the way we interact with other groups is exactly like how our body interacts with disease and toxins. The first step is to contain the toxin or toxic group of people. The next step is to expel them if they can't be fully contained. The next step is to kill them. Our body does this through heat or a fever, and sometimes humans do the same thing by burning the bodies or burning people at the stake. And the final step is to try and absorb the toxic set of genes or people, as they have survived your attempts to destroy the toxin and may have useful coping strategies, as they would likely be helpful to the group. Now that we understand the genetic toxin response, we can look at the parallels throughout history where groups that were considered toxic, especially the Jews, were treated with the genetic toxin response many times throughout history. This is because the Jews fill the genetic role of a toxin, and the larger group tries to become immune to, which is actually beneficial to the health of the larger group as long as the toxin doesn't gain too much power or get out of hand. Once the toxin gets out of hand, the toxin response begins. The first step in the Holocaust was to contain the Jews in concentration camps. This was to stop them from further spreading their toxic ideologies and worldviews in the eyes of the Germans. Other forms of containment might be imposing harsh business restrictions or rules on the Jews to stop them from being toxic, which is the historical norm. The next step was to expel the Jews. Germans tried to expel the Jews and hand them over to the Allies, but the Allies refused Jewish refugees. This led to the Germans keeping the Jews in containment until they started losing the war, which created pressure on the superorganism, which led to the next step of the genetic toxin response being activated. The final step to the Holocaust was killing the Jews. This was done through the methods that could be considered as decontaminating or toxin cleansing by the use of Zyklon B, a delousing agent which was used in gas chambers to kill the Jews. The bodies were then burned as a way to try and cleanse the bodies of toxins. The Germans were probably doing this subconsciously. And if the Jews were able to survive a certain period of genocide, they would have been absorbed into the German genetic group. In conclusion, the genetic toxin response gives us a clear guide as to why the Holocaust occurred and why it happened.